set, go!
There was nothing to keep them hanging about when the instruction once it came, and the 137th University Float Race over 4 miles and 374 yards of the River Thames is underway. And Cambridge, on the bottom of your picture, that's the Middlesex station, seem to have gone off the faster and maybe have taken a quarter of a length advantage.
I think that and a little bit more possibly. They got a very clean start, good first stroke. They've been doing that very well in practice. They seem to have snatched about a third of a length, speed and a half. The crews aren't actually steering quite in parallel at the moment. It's hard to read it. I think it's a good half length.
Well, this will be a bit of a blow to Oxford and a great boost to Cambridge. The margin is just a little more than half a length. That's Cambridge.
Cambridge got off at 40 strokes. It now settled. Oxford is still slightly higher than Cambridge.
Well, this will enable Andrew Bracey to push out a little bit towards Surrey, keeping Oxford on the outside of the Fulham Bend.
Oxford are responding. They're trying to pull back again. I think they weren't so fast in the first 10 to 15 strokes, but in their second 15 they've pulled back a bit. They'll certainly be trying to hold Cambridge and prevent them coming onto that first bend and taking a full advantage of it.
Cannot cross over without clear water, but so far the blades have been well separated and no problems for the umpire.
It's interesting that Cambridge are already striking a little bit lower than Oxford. They'll be hoping to keep Oxford's rate of striking up because that's been when they've been most vulnerable. Oxford are at their strongest at a rate below 35. Both crews will be looking to settle into a race pace that will seal them over the course, but hope to steal as much advantage as they can during that initial phase of the race.
My impression is that Oxford are beginning to come back at them. This first bend calculated to be worth maybe 2/3 of a length.
It's certainly not worth more than that. Probably half, I think. 2/3 if the steering permits it.
Footballers watch their friends and colleagues go past, knowing that they've fought out a close battle at Craven Cottage, and we have the makings here of the close race that had been predicted. But at the moment it's something like 3/4 of a length advantage for Cambridge, and that's the benefit of the bend beginning to show.
Cambridge are spurted. They pushed in a 2.5 minute burst at around about 37. They pulled out again to nearly 3/4 of a length. They want to see if they can get out to a length. With that, they can start to dominate the race, because they know that if by Harrods they're not well in contention, meaning well a good length up, they've got to face the full length of the Surrey Bend. And they've now gone out to just under a length, which is tactically exactly what they would have hoped for. The only question is how much that burst would have taken out of them, because to put in a strong burst like that after 2 minutes is very demanding. Cambridge have settled back again. They're down to 35 strokes a minute. It's something, again, they've been trying in practice. Oxford are still at 36, and the crews are very close together.
Yes, I think there's just been a little bit of an adjustment, and they are further apart now than they were.
Certainly the effect of the Middlesex Bend is now over.
You may just have heard there the times to the milepost, around 3 minutes 40 seconds for Cambridge and 3:41 for Oxford, and that's only 5 seconds slower than the record time which Oxford did to the milepost in 76, again in 1985.
These conditions are good conditions, but not perhaps record-breaking. Cambridge have now got to settle into a rhythm which will see them through the course and to hold that Surrey Bend. They've clearly not gained enough advantage in order to take Oxford's water. In fact, Oxford are drawing back on them at this point. There's probably less than a canvas in it. Oxford have countered after the milepost.
Well, that'll be a bit of a blow to Cambridge, because their thinking was certainly that it would require a big effort from them between the milepost and Harrods, and they reckoned that if they were still in touch going to Hammersmith Bridge, things would be looking good for them. But having had the half to 2/3 of a length, maybe even more advantage. Now to be canvas down isn't quite what the plan called for, but still well in touch. It's still a very close race.
Both the crews now have employed fairly massive bursts within the first 3 minutes of the race. Oxford to try and respond to Cambridge's burst when they took 3/4 of a length around that first bend. But it's really a question now of how they settle. Oxford are still pushing through. They've now got about 1/3 of a length as they come up towards Harrods. Now this must be giving them a lot of psychological ammunition. They know they've got the bend, the most significant part of which is between Harrods and St Paul's School Boathouse, just round the first part of the Surrey Bend.
Now we look back. That's the famous boat race landmark, Harrods Depository there on the Surrey bank. As they come towards Hammersmith Bridge, coxes will be looking for a very familiar mark to people who row on the river. On the centre span of the bridge, the second lamppost from the left is supposed to be the ideal line. Oxford have the advantage going through Hammersmith Bridge and coming round towards the big left-hand bend.
So now Cambridge have got to show courage and wisdom beyond their years. They have got to hold on round this bend because they've got no advantage due to them for another 5 or 6 minutes of this race. So they mustn't drop any further back. They must try and hold them round this next stage. Both crews are maintaining a rate of 36, which is well up on their practice rates. The question really is whether both the crews can keep this high rate of striking and hold their cohesion.
6:33 against 6:34, the time at Hammersmith Bridge. Still only a second in it. There is the shot from our camera on the Oxford boat. Just a little blob of water has flown up onto the lens, but you can still see the big drive there from Obholzer, the Oxford president and stroke, and you can feel there too from this angle not only the effort but the pace of the boat through the water.
So remember how narrow these boats are, hard to balance. Still Cambridge holding on just over a length. They can't afford to drop any further. Cambridge having to take further half length or so to go around the outside of that bend.
Well, now there's a difficult decision developing for Andrew Bracey about which line to take round this bend. He's being forced a bit wide at the moment, and many a boat race has been lost by going too wide here. He won't want to row immediately behind Oxford.
He's got to decide whether to tuck in behind and try and shadow Oxford and then pull out onto the Barnes bend, the Middlesex bend, which favours Cambridge, if they can just hang on there.
Perfect Easter weather, whether you're on holiday or whether you're slogging from Putney to Mortlake.
Certainly the gap has extended. Oxford seem to have 2 lengths and perhaps a bit more. They pulled out around the sharp point of the Surrey bend, just past the pier at Hammersmith.
Following the race in one of the flotilla of launches, Princess Royal, who will present the trophy at Mortlake. Justicz 8 on the right of that picture. It's another aiming mark for the coxes, somewhere about halfway along the island there. They're now past that and continuing left-handed round the big Hammersmith bend.
These boats, the boat itself weighs about the same as one oarsman, so under 200 pounds this boat. Only about 18 inches wide in the stern where we see the stroke Rupert Obholzer. Now these oarsmen are pulling at the equivalent rate of lifting a sack of potatoes from ankle to neck 35 times a minute. Just sit back in your chair and think about it. And they've got to do that on a platform which is wobbling around all the time. They make it easy because they've practiced and practiced to try and make it perfect.
£13,000 about, if you want to buy one. The gap is beginning to open ominously for Cambridge.
Yes, it begins to look as if they shot their bolt early. Oxford were able to get out in front and establish a rhythm which they were able to hold. Oxford were looking a little scrappier early in the race, but certainly they've been able to hold off anything Cambridge has been able to do since Hammersmith.
.26 for Oxford at Chiswick Steps, 10:33 for Cambridge. So 7-second margin now, and that's some 2.5 lengths probably. So a fast race, but not record time. Nothing better than being able to look back down the river and see your opponents behind you.
Yes, Oxford are able to settle down now. Their blade work is looking really quite solid. It's not the cleanest, but it's very strong.
9.5 pounds a man, the weight advantage.
Certainly.
The people who put their money with that tradition look as though they're going to collect.
Well, all things being equal, the bigger, stronger crew will win, but it assumes that they're technically equal. 2 weeks ago, no one would have compared these two crews. Oxford were showing really great weaknesses in technique, and it's a credit to them and to their finishing coach, Mike Spracklin, currently the national coach to the Canadians, but well known as Steve Redgrave's coach for many years. And he's managed to polish this crew up. They've always had the ability, because they've got some outstanding individuals, particularly the president, Rupert Obholzer, and of course Matthew Pinsent at 6. They're now being much more send away from the finish. They're moving better together off the finish. You can see them punch the boat away, quick release and swing away. In practice, they've had very little swing, and it's meant that the timing forward has been very erratic, something that Cambridge have had much better. But certainly in the punishing middle stages of the race, they were able to draw on their experience and strength to drive past Cambridge.
The next bridge, and the last one they will have to shoot in the race, is the railway bridge at Barnes. There is this timeless feel about the boat race, but of course in the very early days, none of the bridges under which they row now was actually there.
It's Cambridge who are struggling now. They're taking 2 strokes a minute more than Oxford, and it's beginning to show. It's looking rather hurried, no run between the strokes. The idea is the oars should be used to sweep the boat past efficiently in a relaxed way as possible.
Three lengths and a bit more as Oxford come to Barnes Bridge, and now they just have the right-hand bend. It's about 3/4 of a mile from here to the finish at Justicz.
It's one of the few rules of the boat race. The crews must go through the centre arch. It is where maximum current lies. Regardless of the conditions, the centre arches are where they must go. Oxford are increasing their tempo.
Concentration will be the watchword now as they begin to tire. Everything absolutely under control. Just needs the mental toughness to keep the routine going, to do what they've practiced so often and what they've trained so hard to deliver.
Cambridge now some 4 lengths behind.
12 seconds was the margin at Barnes Bridge. It's now behind them. And you can see the right-hand bend beginning to unfurl as they come towards Chiswick.
And Oxford has certainly chosen their moment. This is probably the best rowing we've seen from them in the previous fortnight. They've been getting better by the day. No one quite knew how they'd shake up under pressure.
Neil Chugani will have more reason to celebrate than most, having got it all wrong in the reserve race last year. He's got it all right this time.
Richard Young there behind the president, Obholzer. Only the second man to do it twice, as it were. He rode for Cambridge and lost. And here he is, looks as if he's going to get a victory for Oxford.
It's Chiswick Bridge in the distance, and the finish is just this side.
The breathing will be hard, the pain considerable, but they know they're getting near the end. It's for Cambridge, the pain worse because they know they're some distance behind.
Yes, that's where it hurts. For some, there'll be another year.
Certainly for most of this Cambridge crew, there are 4 or so. So Adam is back again, the stroke, Adam Wright, and the 3 men behind him.
So we come towards the finish of the 137th boat race, and Oxford head for their 15th victory in the last 16 years. They win now, and the celebrations can begin before Cambridge even cross the line. Battled well over the first mile to a mile and a half. Held their own round Fulham, but once Oxford began to put the pressure on, there was only ever one winner. The contrast between winners and losers familiar. Cheers for the losers, because they know that they would have given their all too. Official times, 16 minutes 59 seconds for Oxford, 17 minutes and 12 seconds for Cambridge.